Whether it's Kristi Noem talking about Kim Jong-un, whether it's Tim Scott talking about the election, whether it's Marco Rubio talking about abortion. The competition to ride shotgun with Trump is an audition of lies from aspiring liars to please the liar in chief. The man who lied a documented 30,000 plus times to the American people during his presidency. It is Monday, May the 6th, 2024. In 83 days, there will be 100 left until the American people elect the next president of the United States. President Joseph Robinette Biden of Delaware or Donald Trump, perhaps of the federal penitentiary system. This Sunday was audition morning for Donald Trump's putative vice presidential nominees. He's looking to upgrade the position from the disloyal Mike Pence, who refused to make Donald Trump the dictator. He wants more pliable candidates. And so Elise Stefanik, Marco Rubio, Kristi Noem, and Tim Scott are all out on the circuit. We'll go through each of their interviews. We'll look at the demagoguery, the dishonesty, the insanity, and the promise to get rid of democracy in America. Where to begin? Let's start with Kristi Noem.
This book is extremely important to the people of this country. It is important because it's a how-to guide of what they can do to have input into their government, how we need breakers and builders in this world. And I'm taking responsibility for the change that we've made.
No, Kristi Noem, your book is not important. It's a collection of idiocies, bundled together, printed. It is, in fact, probably going to be remembered as the biggest book fail for any aspiring presidential candidate ever. She shot the puppy. Well, Kristi Noem, no one cares about the book except for what it reveals about your sociopathy, your cruelty, and what it speaks to in this moment of Republican ecstasy for the low, for the mean, for the unworthy. In a few short minutes, a woman who actually believes when she looks in the mirror that she should be the vice president of the United States within 7 minutes of being asked questions, as her nonsense, as her lies completely unravel, she's playing the victim. Let's watch the incredible transformation. Margaret Brennan is the veteran host of Face the Nation and one of the very best in the business. Let's watch her get this interview started with an off-change pitch. And let's watch Kristi Noem's swing and a miss. This is how it's done. Let's watch the artistry.
Well, Governor, I have your book right here. The very first blurb in it is an endorsement from Donald Trump. He says, this book, it's a winner, lays out a fantastic plan to make America great again. I know you're back from a gathering with Mr. Trump and other Republicans in Florida. Did he mention any of the response to your book at all?
Oh, he certainly knows about the book, and I appreciate his endorsement of it. You know, this is really a book that talks about how we're not going back. We're now going back to the days before Donald Trump. Donald Trump broke politics. And I think that's a good thing. We're not going back to the days of Mitt Romney or the Bushes, that now there's a new way to do and talk to the American people, and they appreciate it.
Do you see how off balance Kristi Noem gets? Of course, the news is filled with headlines of what Donald Trump thinks about Kristi Noem's book, which tells the story of her blowing away her puppy with a 12-gauge shotgun in a gravel pit in front of workers, minutes before the school bus dropped off her daughter. We're about to watch an incredible exchange take place between Margaret Brennan and the South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, whose credibility will be completely destroyed for all time within the next few minutes. Before we start, let's freeze this moment in time in amber. This before and after moment, as we see Kristi Noem who just moments ago talked about the honesty of Donald Trump, a man who lied to the American people more than 35,000 documented times during his 4-year presidency, who defamed and degraded and insulted honorable people, George W. Bush and Mitt Romney, gratuitously, cruelly, for no reason, lie about her meeting Kim Jong-un. We're going to watch a lie unravel. We're going to see the psychology deconstruct of the MAGA prototypical politician. Empty, unsubstantive, dishonest. Let's watch Kristi Noem begin the end of her career in this interview, start by saying what is standard fare for any MAGA-like politician these days. Oh, I'm underestimated. I'm the victim. And by the way, as Margaret Brennan will make clear in a few more moments, Kim Jong-un is the nuclear-armed tyrant of a slave society. What manner is the idiocy of Kristi Noem? Is she doing her Sarah Palin interpretation? Is she doing her Sarah Palin impression? I know how to stare down little tyrants. I was a child's pastor is a, and I mean this, profoundly stupid thing to say.
You talk about meeting some world leaders, and one specific one, quote, "I remember when I met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. I've been a children's pastor after all." Did you meet Kim Jong-un?
Well, as soon as this was brought to my attention, I certainly made some changes and looked at this passage. And I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. As soon as it was brought to my attention, we went forward and have made some edits. So I'm glad that this book is being released in a couple of days, and that those edits will be in place, and that people will have the updated version.
So you did not meet with Kim Jong-un. That's what you're saying.
I met with many, many world leaders.
That isn't the question, Kristi Noem. The question is, did you or did you not meet with Kim Jong-un? And the answer is obviously you did not. Because if you did, then you would have been able to say a 3-letter word, yes, but you didn't. Governor Bill Richardson met with Kim Jong-un. Dennis Rodman met with Kim Jong-un. But you, Kristi Noem, have never met with Kim Jong-un. Why is that in your book? It is a lie, an act of puffery, of stupidity that shows your vacuity, your emptiness, your complete fabrication as a political product in the age of Trump that has taken you to within consideration of the vice presidency when you exploded like a cheap Chinese firework over the South Dakota sky on a July 4th. Boom. Let's keep going.
I think I've talked extensively in this book about my time serving in Congress, my time as governor, before governor, some of the travels that I've had. I'm not going to talk about my specific meetings with world leaders. I'm just not going to do that.
What do you mean? Like, why not? Like, why not? Why won't you talk about the anecdotes, Kristi Noem? Like the book, the reason we're talking about the anecdotes of world leaders is because you made up anecdotes about meeting with world leaders like Kim Jong-un in the book. And now you don't want to talk about the meetings with world leaders, the many, many world leaders that you've had over the course of your long career. Why? The deep secrets, the grave matters of state? Why, Kristi Noem?
This anecdote shouldn't have been in the book, and as soon as it was brought to my attention, I made sure that that was adjusted. So the book is not released until Tuesday, and so we're doing all that we can to make sure that those changes are made, and I'm going to continue to focus on what this book is and the blueprint that it lays out for the American citizen on all of the things in the background and stories of my life, but also what I think that needs to be identified in politics and what's broken today. I talk about how broken the money game is, how broken it is that we've got consultants that are getting rich off of elected officials, and then how fake some elected politicians are.
Who is the we? Who is the we that she's talking about regarding the book that has her name on it? And she's talking about leadership. She's talking about accountability. She's trying to create this image that she is a person who can be trusted, when in fact the book is a bundle of lies. But the entire premise, one that is about accountability, is just completely non-existent, because she's too vapid to understand the inherent contradiction between the book, the lies, and reality. It is truly a marvel of the age. Here comes Margaret Brennan in for the kill.
You talk about your time in the Armed Services Committee from 2013 to 2015. In that period of time, the leader of South Korea was a female president. I'm wondering, who is it that you confused Kim Jong-un with?
Well, I think you need to remember, Margaret, and everybody needs to remember, that I've worked on ag policy and federal policy for over 30 years. My time in serving and making policies in this country has been extensive and covered decades.
Right, but you never went to North
North
Korea.
Specifics in this book. I talk about the fact that, yes, I have.
The evasiveness here is clinical. It's pathological. And it matters a great deal because it speaks to the degradations in our culture and our politics, the constancy of the assault on truth, and the consistency with which politicians like Kristi Noem have gotten away with it inside the delusion sphere of Fox News and Newsmax and OAN and the patio at Mar-a-Lago. This interview matters because here we see a confrontation between what is true and what is real with Kristi Noem, and it all completely collapses and falls apart. The answer is absurd. She starts talking about, but I've been on the agriculture committee, to a direct question. And Margaret Brennan is coming for it. She wants to know, have you been to North Korea or not? And Kristi Noem says, I have. And clearly, she has not. If you go, as I have done, to the edge of the DMZ in South Korea, you are in South Korea. Kristi Noem has not been to where she says she has. She refuses to correct it. She refuses to answer a direct question. She evades and lies, and by the end, you see her trapped. Let's keep going.
There are details in this book that talk about going to the DMZ and specifics that I'm willing to share. There's some specifics I'm not willing to share with you. I've traveled the world and I visited with world leaders, and some of that is referenced in the book and this anecdote.
The inference here, some of these I'll share, some of these I can't. Why not? Why can't she share the stories of who she met? Is she inferring Kissinger-like James Baker, like Secretary Albright, Secretary Clinton, that she's in the middle of some top secret negotiation somewhere, some grave matter of security or state? Please, how preposterous.
Well, I'm asking about that specifically because you made the point to bring him up twice and that he was a little tyrant.
Do you have a question for me, Margaret?
Yes, I do. South Korea is a treaty ally. North Korea is a nuclear-armed adversary. So that's a pretty big thing to confuse. I know you read this book before it was published because you released video of your recording of the audiobook. You didn't catch these errors when you were recording it?
Oh, Margaret, as soon as it was brought to my attention, I took action to make sure that it was reflected.
As soon as it was brought to my attention, I took action, is what Kristi Noem just said. 30 seconds after a question was asked that made clear that she recorded the book on video. Is Governor Noem trying to communicate that she might have a multiple personality disorder here? The dissociative quality pinned down the truth coming for the lie is really astonishing to see. What would a psychologist call this? What would a psychiatrist say this is? Fascinating, isn't it? Let's keep watching. The truth is coming.
We have the White House that just recently came out and confirmed that President Joe Biden has misspoken, has made mistakes, has even outright lied over close to 150 times just this year, and you've done nothing to question him on any of that. And you're talking about a book that hasn't been released yet, that's been corrected before it's been released, and you haven't said one thing about Joe Biden saying that he was in prison with Nelson Mandela, that he started the civil rights movement. That
if I had an interview with Joe Biden, who I've asked for multiple times, I will definitely ask him about his record. But I'm asking you about your book here, which we have.
I'm just asking for why. So why am I being treated differently than every other person that you've interviewed?
Oh, there we go. There we go. The MAGA victim, the right-wing MAGA victim, whining and crying like a true cowgirl.
You don't interrupt other people, you let them talk. Thank you for inviting me to have this conversation about this book. This book is extremely important to the people of this country. It is important because it's a how-to guide of what they can do to have input into their government, how we need breakers and builders in this world. And I'm taking responsibility for the change that we've made.
And for the mistake in the book.
And I've told you that, and I'm no, it's not. What I've said is that I have
You're not taking responsibility for the mistakes in the book.
I've decided this, and I'm saying that this book is very, very good, and I've met with many world leaders, and that there are world leaders that I've met with that are in this book. There are many that I've met with that are not in this book.
What are we watching here? The GnomeBot 2024 model fizzle out? Zzz. This is like a scene from Westworld on HBO. The program has been contaminated. She is sputtering. The gibberish. It's becoming a contagion now. A computer virus, if you will. It is altering the tape. This is a vapid, lying, dishonest person who has executive responsibility for an American state, where on any given day this week, a tornado could wipe out a town. It is astonishing. Astonishing. Sarah Palin has met her match at long last.
I know you know this question is coming because there's been such an enormous backlash about your revelation that you shot and killed a wire hair pointer named Cricket, who was 14 months old. You say in the book she came from another family that struggled with her aggression. You'd been training her to hunt. She got too excited, ruined the hunt, and then attacked and killed some chickens. I wonder if you have regrets about sharing this story.
You know, Margaret, this book is filled with vulnerable, painful moments in my life, filled with times where I've made very difficult decisions. The reason that this story is in the book, because people need to understand who I am and some of those difficult decisions. This was a dangerous animal that was killing livestock and attacking people. And I had little children at the time. Our operation had many kids running around and people in interaction with the public. And I made a difficult choice. I think you're a mother too, and you have little kiddos. Would you make a choice between your children or a dangerous animal?
One of the things we don't talk enough about, I think, is the utter weirdness and strangeness of this era and these people. This is actually something that occurred between a governor, South Dakota's governor, and the host of Face the Nation on a network Sunday morning public affairs program in the United States in 2024. The governor of South Dakota has written in her book how she blew away the 14-month-old puppy with her shotgun. And now, a few days later, when asked a question if she regrets sharing the story, it has become a tale of her defending her family, her children, from a wolf pack, a pride of lions, an angry tiger out to kill. There are no words. Because there are moments when Saturday Night Live and the greatest of all cold opens merges completely, perfectly, absolutely with reality. In this conversation, which actually happened, means something. And that seems like a perfect place to leave Kristi Noem's political career. Let's move on to South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. This one, it's a woozy. We're about to watch Kristen Welker on NBC's Meet the Press expose Tim Scott as a profound threat to the American Republic as it approaches the 250th anniversary of its creation on July 4th of 2026. Let's go through this piece by piece so you can understand what it is that Tim Scott is saying. But first, let's set some parameters. Let's set some boundaries. Let's invoke reality so we understand what it is that Tim Scott is setting up. Let's appreciate how dishonest this man is. First, the 2020 presidential election in the United States of America was the freest and fairest election in all the broad sweep of American history. That is not to say that there were not isolated incidents of criminal activity, voter fraud. In fact, some of those people, a handful, have mostly been identified with, guess who? The MAGA right. But the idea that the election was stolen, as has been asserted over and over and over and over again by Donald Trump, is not true. There is no evidence that has ever been presented that stands up as fact, as reality. It is like Kristi Noem's meeting with Kim Jong-un. It is bullshit. It is not real. It is not true. It is a fantasy. It is a lie. Let's keep watching.
You voted to certify the election results of 2020. It's the exact opposite of what you said and did after 2020. Why would you want to be on a ticket with someone where there's such a fundamental difference?
There is clear facts here. President Trump himself said he expects this election to be fair, he expects it to be honest, and he expects to win. That's what the presidential candidate should expect, and I expect the exact same thing. And frankly, the American people agree with him. This is an issue that is not an issue, so I'm not going to make it an issue.
Well, Senator, will you commit to accepting the election results of 2024? Bottom line.
At the end of the day, the 47th president of the United States will be President Donald Trump.
Wrong answer, Tim Scott. I'm one of the few people in American history who has had the privilege of placing a concession phone call from a defeated presidential candidate to the winner of the presidential election. I did it on behalf of John McCain to Senator about to become President-elect Barack Obama. It is a solemn moment, and it is one that every presidential candidate must be committed to at the foundation of any campaign, because that campaign could potentially end with their taking the 35-word oath shared by Washington and Lincoln and Kennedy that promises to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, which assigns political power through an election process, which delegates authority for a time, circumscribing and limiting power while preserving individual rights, always through the will of the people, through an election. Our American society falls apart if this compact between us falls apart. Donald Trump has broken this. This is what Kristi Noem means when she says he broke politics. How dare these people defame and insult George W. Bush and Mitt Romney, men of character, men of decency. Let's watch Kristen Welker come back around on the second pass to the easiest and most obvious question you could ever ask a United States senator in this country. And what is most disgraceful about it? This is a Black Republican senator from the secessionist state of South Carolina. Incredible. Let's watch round two.
Yes or no, will you accept the election results of 2024 no matter who wins?
That is my statement.
But is it just yes or no? Will you accept the election results of 2024?
I look forward to President Trump being the 47th president. Kristen, you could ask him multiple times. But
Senator, just a yes or no answer.
So the American people will make the decision.
But I don't hear you committing
for President Trump. That's clear.
I don't hear you committing to the election results.
Here's the challenge.
Will you commit to accepting the election results?
This is why so many Americans believe that NBC is an extension of the Democrat Party.
5 times. Kristen Welker has just asked Tim Scott 5 times. A simple question. If Donald Trump loses, will he accept the results of the election? Will you demand, Tim Scott, that he accept the results of the election? Tim Scott, what the hell is wrong with you? Why won't you answer this question that is foundational to the American way of life? We are at this moment in the interview 5 times in with Kristen Welker asking Tim Scott, a United States Senator from South Carolina, whether he will honor the choice of the sovereign in this land, which is the American people. Remember this, Tim? Government of the people, by the people, for the people. Let's watch him evade the question, getting towards the 10th time in the interview.
At the end of the day, I've said what I've said, and I know that the American people, their voices will be heard, and I believe that President Trump will be our next president. It's that simple.
But, Senator, as you know, the hallmark of our democracy is that both candidates agree to a peaceful transfer of power. So I'm asking you, as a potential VP nominee, will you accept to commit to the election results in this election cycle, no matter who wins? Just simply yes or no.
I expect President Trump to win the next election. Listen, I'm not going to answer your hypothetical question when, in fact, I believe the American people are speaking today on the results of the election. And if it continues for the next 6 months.
Full stop. Let me say this clearly. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. This is a yes or no question. It is not a hypothetical question. What it is a disqualifying question. This is a question that goes to the heart of our society. Look at this loathsome man, a United States Senator sitting on national television, who is so enamored by the prospect of achieving political power, of being picked by Donald Trump, that he will desecrate his oath on live television. He will say anything. He will do anything. He is unworthy of high office at a galactic level. He fails the test. He's not a man of character. He's not a man of credibility. He's not a man of virtue. He's not an honorable man. He's not an honest man. He is unworthy. He's cast aside patriotism because he has a taste of celebrity and fame and power, and he wants more. And onward to little Marco.
The issue of abortion has been a very difficult one for Republicans. You seem to be of the mindset that you need to embrace it and try to control the conversation in a better way and actually talk about it, not run from it. Democrats, though, feel like it's a great case to make against you. Here's the vice president in Florida days ago when the 6-week ban in Florida went into effect.
Since Roe was overturned, every time reproductive freedom has been on the ballot, the people of America voted for freedom.
Now, the Florida Supreme Court has said an abortion measure can be on the Florida ballot there in November. How worried are you about that motivating the base?
Well, what I'm more worried about is that no one ever asked the Vice President, Kamala Harris, or any Democrat, what restrictions do they support? Which abortion should not be allowed? They never tell you. Should someone be allowed to do an abortion on the day of birth, after birth, 9 months? Should past the point of viability? Well, they will never tell you which abortions should not be allowed. Okay, they're always demanding to know what exceptions do you support, but they never tell you which restrictions they would support. They are extremists.
Marco Rubio has a tell. Whenever he's rattled, he starts speaking more quickly. He gets that dry mouth. Well, little Marco, as Donald Trump used to call him, is prattling on, and he's trying to demonstrate in the audition to Donald Trump that he can master the abortion issue, that he's going to take it on offense. Now, the problem with Marco's argument here is that it is fantastical. It is completely made up. This is sophistry at a mediocre level, but given the inarticulate people in Congress today like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert who communicate at a preschool level, it's fairly sophisticated. What Marco Rubio is trying to do is to turn an argument about a real thing that is occurring into a debate about a fantasy that is not. He is demanding that people take hypothetical positions while he decries actual reality as hypothetical. It's quite a trick. Let me give you an example. Arizona. Did you know when we talk about the Arizona abortion law of 1864, that Arizona didn't even become a state to 1912? And in fact, the first time anybody ever even said the word Arizona was in 1862, and it was Jefferson Davis. It was the Confederate States who declared there would be a new territory carved off from New Mexico that would be theirs, Arizona. Abraham Lincoln and the United States a year later said, yes, there's an Arizona now, but it's Union territory. In fact, there were Civil War battles fought in Arizona. But in 1864, just 1 year after the Union recognized it, is when the law, the territorial law that women were governed under for a bit, came into effect. All over the country, a wall has come crashing down. On one side of it are women that live in free states, like New York and New Jersey, Connecticut, California. On the other side are women in states like Ohio and Mississippi and Alabama who have lost their rights to health care, to privacy. The truth of the matter is that Donald Trump has talked about his approval of monitoring pregnant women under the decree of states' rights, state law. Now, states' rights, as it is being used today to differentiate rights between Americans, where in some states people have more or full rights, while in other states people have less or no rights, is an old story, because these are the same states that fought to the last before acknowledging the human rights of Black people. And now there is a new type of subjugation that will particularly land hard on poor women. Now, the question at hand is not the one that Marco Rubio is demagoguing. Because the truth of the matter is, there are no elective abortions of viable, healthy babies at 9 months, at birth, after birth. It is a nonsensical question. It doesn't exist. There are no clinics. Marco Rubio, I challenge you to name one. Tell us all, please, where it is that abortions are being performed on healthy, viable fetuses at 8 months, at 9 months, at 40 weeks, at 38 weeks, at 32 weeks, at 30 weeks. Where is it happening? What hospitals? What clinics? There are terrible moments in the lives of Americans who lose children and who find out late in pregnancies that something catastrophic has happened. And that's a medical matter. And that may mean ending that pregnancy of a fetus that will never live outside of the womb, not for a second, or maybe just for a few moments. This is a disastrous choice in people's lives. And what Marco Rubio proposes with the forked tongue of a practiced demagogue is that the federal government, that he and Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley will be there in a prayer circle, maybe with Pastor Paula. Remember her speaking in tongues? They're with you and your family as you go through the process. In Trump's name. The reality in America is that a right that had existed for 50 years was stripped away. Gone. And all of the justices that did it and committed to be faithful to the concept of precedent. And what they've done through radical, extremist decisions is open a rupture in the society. And what has now become contested again is a question of whether women are full and equal citizens in the United States. What the question at hand is about is whether there is a separate and unequal healthcare system that will now separate men and women, with the government prying into the records from puberty to menopause of America's women, because what else could it possibly mean when Donald Trump promises we have to monitor the pregnant women? Or we have to punish the women, which he said. What Marco Rubio is fantasizing about is something that he read maybe in a high school debate magazine. If I speak quick, if I talk loud, people will just absorb it because they can't think about it. But that's not reality, because America's women know America's healthcare system. What's real and what's not. And what Marco Rubio's talking about isn't real. It isn't true. It's dishonest as... Let's keep watching.
They believe abortion should be allowed at any time, for any reason, basically, and paid for by taxpayers. No one ever asked Kamala Harris that. No one ever asked the Democrats that. So someone should start asking them what their position is on that. And then we can sort of define and decide, all right, what are the policy options here?
Because no one supports that. No one supports that. It's completely made up. He might as well be talking about the invasion from Jupiter. It's not real. It's a lie. Just like the stolen election. Over and over again, whether it's Kristi Noem talking about Kim Jong-un, whether it's Tim Scott talking about the election, whether it's Marco Rubio talking about abortion, the competition to ride shotgun with Trump is an audition of lies from aspiring liars to please the liar in chief. The man who lied a documented 30,000 plus times to the American people during his presidency. The Sunday shows were a debacle for the truth. But all of these people encountered some real tough questions from Margaret Brennan, from Kristen Welker. Good for them. What a preposterous moment for the American people. 183 days to go. And one of those three, minus Kristi Noem, might be the Vice President of the United States. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning, and I invite you to subscribe on our Substack, on our YouTube channel. Follow us. Welcome to the community.